All right. Hi and welcome back to Roundtable, everyone. Today I'm gonna run this, and we've got Danny, David, and Steve here, and we're gonna chat about dealing with pain with our athletes from a coaching perspective. I think we all as coaches have systems on how we deal with pain with our athletes, and it's always individualized based on each athlete. So I really want to get your guys' take on how you deal with pain and stuff within their training, and how that can relate to getting to some results. So Danny, I'll start with you. What's your take on dealing with pain with your athletes? Do you have like a philosophy that you would kind of run by when it comes to this subject?
Yep. So when I looked up, when I looked up how I think I manage pain in terms of managing it with people,
Yeah.
I think of pain as a protective mechanism rather than an indicator that there is always going to be damage, right? So like they are very closely linked. And although pain might be present, sometimes muscle damage might not be there either, right? But
Yeah.
it's very likely that when you do sustain an injury, pain is going to be present. And so let's say in the case of an acute injury, when something does happen immediately, I think it is a good idea to just like cease training and immediately see if there's any range of motion deficits that we can still train through without making it worse. And then as the sessions go on, say like a week or 2 weeks going on, and the pain persists and it's chronic, I think then it's a matter of like sensitivity, and especially that level that your body is able to tolerate becomes lower as a result of an injury, for example. And therefore, I treat it as another thing that we need to progress over time. So after an initial injury, that threshold where we might get these sensations of pain will be much lower. Say, for example, you're squatting like 200 kilos and then you hurt yourself, and now every time you touch something over 2 reps, you start to feel pain, right? But if it's been like 2 or 3 weeks and it's been like a minor strain or something like that, it's a good idea to not just back off of it and train pain free whilst limiting load. It's a good idea to try and tolerate a little bit without it flaring up, right? And therefore, as your body starts to desensitize and back off of resorting to a pain response, that's where I find we can still maintain some level of strength long term. Because I think the worst thing that happens is when people overreact to this sensation of pain and they conclude, and it's a natural conclusion to have, where you think, oh, I'm still in pain, it's still injured, and therefore I shouldn't train hard. But that leads us nowhere, right? And
Yep.
eventually when you do decide to want to train hard again, that tissue hasn't been through enough stress because you've backed off for so long.
Yeah.
So I think it comes down to education, like educating the way I perceive the pain response as an indicator rather than like a muscle damage perspective. And I find that that helps a lot with then exposing people to exercise over time.
Yeah, good stuff. I like that. What about you, Dave?
So I think it probably depends mostly on the person, or at least that's what I try and do. So if you've got someone like Steve who'll just train through pain sort of no matter what, then I guess it's up to the athlete, or you can put it to the athlete to see if they're comfortable training through the level of pain they're experiencing, especially if there's a prep or something on the line.
Yeah.
Otherwise, some others may not prefer to training through any pain at all. And that's where I think variations or machines can come in handy. So using specific variations, whether it's like a belt squat, a safety bar, high bar, anything like that, and finding, I guess, something that's more comfortable. It doesn't have to be completely pain-free, because that may not be possible with whatever sort of injury or niggle they've got going on, but
Yeah.
finding some kind of variation that feels decent or better for them, and using that as a way to sort of drive progression and still have some sort of training effect.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that is a really good point, because you know, at the end of the day, we're talking about powerlifting here. So if there is a prep on the line and, you know, getting the stimulus in is one of the most important things if that's what the athlete wants. What
Yeah,
about you, Steve?
I guess like touching on what the other two said, it's just keeping like gradual exposure, right, to where the injury has occurred. If it's an injury,
Yeah.
how much the athlete's catastrophizing over that as well, whether or not they are someone kind of like, I guess, with myself, or if they're a bit different and, you know, they have what I would say is minor, but they're catastrophizing over it, saying they can't finish the session or something like that. So it's just understanding the person. And I guess from our point of view as coaches, we need to show care, right? And we need to be able to make adjustments on the fly, especially during that kind of period in someone's training. I think that's the biggest thing is like I can make call audibles throughout the week for people who are dealing with injuries, like judging by how much ROM they can get through on a particular session, or I'll be jumping in their program multiple times a week to be able to adjust things for them. And it's like, we need this gradual exposure. Say if we've got someone that's hurt themselves, low bar squatting or something, like Dave and Denny said, like we need to pick a variation. It's like, how can we get back to low bar squatting, or what way are we going to be able to go about doing this? So if we've had to, you know, elevate the heels to get off the adductors or something, or get them forward, it's like, how do we get them back to a point where we can get them back on the floor, but without, because we can't just throw the whole session there, right?
Yeah.
Like if you do that, you've just exposed them completely, and they're probably going to flare up that injury again. So it's like, from our point of view, we need to make a controlled measure of how frequently we're going to expose them. So whether that be like, okay, let's now do 1 set low bar and then the rest back to how we were doing it. Even if you are getting an increased amount of pain that you were, you know, with this heel elevator variation, that's okay, because we need to try and get back there, and we need to build up the resiliency in that tissue again.
Yeah, definitely.
Rather than just like leaving you there the whole time, because you're not going to get stronger. And like you said, it's powerlifting. We need to get good at the competition lifts, and we need to be able to push through them again.
Yeah. How do you guys have any communication methods that you will use with your athletes on communicating and rating pain?
I like to use like a scale out of 10. Like 10 is catastrophic damage. Like, and I would personally rate it something like broken an arm, torn muscle, things like that. And so it gives a sense of understanding that it's not like the worst thing out there. Generally, like when an acute injury happens, it might be a strain. That's pretty common. And at worst, I'll say like 7, 8 when it's at its worst, and then like a couple of days later, it's like 4, 3, and that helps give some sort of progress, especially when you correlate it with like load progressions as well. But then communicating through that, like I verbally tell my people like, okay, work up to something that you can tolerate, and as long as it's not getting worse, you should be okay to tolerate it, and it'll pass you through to the next session. Don't think that just because you have pain now that like a prep is ruined, or like progress is going to go down the drain, because this is going to happen to everyone. And once you can make it out of this session and your tissue is healthier, you're going to be in a better position than if you didn't train through it and you just waited it out until the pain response went down. Because I think the body is very good at adapting, right? Like it'll heal, and then you'll be at a point where there's less pain than you begun with. And that's just going to happen naturally with things like sprains, strains, things like that. And so discussing that it's okay to tolerate a little bit of pain and to expose it to those ranges of motion that you might feel restricted in initially, and then putting it into the spreadsheet as well. Like, I want you to work up to the RPE or the pain scale, whichever comes first. So then not attached to like loads anymore. It's managing through this phase, and then once you're out of it, then we can reevaluate.
Anyone got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'm the same. Like I'll program someone like, don't go past like a 3 or 4 pain. Also understanding how individualized everyone's pain scale is as well. Like I got people that say that it's like an 8 or a 9, and I'm like, and I ask them, okay, can you explain to me what you're feeling, what this 8 to 9 is? Because my own individual pain scale is like broken almost. So it's like for me to try and understand someone else's, I need to ask them what they're feeling. So then I can be like, okay, like this isn't as bad as you're treating it. I want you to push a little bit harder sometimes. Like it's okay. You're not going to break. And I need you to do this. But then explaining why. Okay. So it's like, because we're building up, the resilience in this tissue, we're trying to expose you more. We need to be able to expose you more. And we also don't want to take you so far away from something for so long that you lose all confidence doing that movement again. Because once you lose that confidence and you get back under the bar, you're just going to be looking for that pain. And if you're looking for that pain, you're just going to be kind of stuck in this circle the whole time and you'll never be able to get out of it. So it's like, I almost get someone like, I've had someone as an example, like hadn't like minor adductor strain 2 weeks ago, same day I changed their program. And then the less than a week later, I was like, I need you to do a set of like competition squat or just like tempo or something, even just load limited, but I want you to do it because I don't want you to build up this fragile mindset where you think you're just going to break all the time but you're not, because for one, you didn't do it powerlifting, and two, we need to kind of build up this resilience like I've spoken about. And rather than them just like, because it's, a lot of people haven't dealt with pain when they come to you sometimes. So it's like, they kind of do catastrophize over it. They don't understand the severity of what it is. And then it's also like, we can have someone on the other side, right? Someone like myself who I'll ignore how severe something is. And it can be really, really bad, like pushing to the point of, as Danny said, like broken bones and stuff, which I've done before, like torn muscles, which are gradual, which is probably worse than some freak accident, just like a quad tearing on the bottom of a squat with no indication that was going to happen whatsoever. But like these gradual kind of pains that just keep building up and then, ends up being a torn muscle or something.
Yeah.
Whereas that myself, I'll follow whatever's on the program. It just needs to be adjusted for me. So I need to communicate that as well, right? So the athlete needs to be able to communicate the pain that they're feeling, how bad it is and what they're going through and where in the movement they're feeling. So if we can understand where they're feeling it, we can then, limit the ROM that they're going through or manage that ROM. And maybe be able to just like put one set through the rest away from it. So we can still get enough workload in and build that confidence up and just have them back under the barbell moving.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Dave?
Not particularly. I think I'm not sure if you use the pain scale as well, but similar from my approach. The other thing that I've found as well is that if someone's been going through an injury for a little while, sometimes they'll have days that just feel better than others. So like they come in after the weekend and then they jump into a squat on a Monday, and that Monday can sort of feel consistently good. Then that might be the time where I'm starting to push that day a little bit more and then give them more of the freedom to pull back on the other days during the week if they feel, particularly worse than the others. So just sort of things like that when they feel good.
That's just you kind of listening, listening to this person probably needs a little bit more rest before they go into their squatting. So, if you were looking at a load management or a prescription thing, you'd probably think, well, I probably don't need to put 2 squatting days back to back or have 2 days that stress that area in a row type thing.
Yeah, 100%.
And that would help them out. How do you guys feel like, obviously we haven't mentioned here at Perf, we have a team of exercise physiologists that help us out with our rehab needs and movement needs when we need, but how do you guys, like, there was this big thing, long ago that it was any pain, stop training. And then it was train through pain. And then now it's like trying to balance it. Do you guys have a rule on referring? Because, I should go back on that a little bit. It was stay in your lane and then it's not stay in your lane type thing, like what the lane for us is very, taking out that Dave and I have EP behind us. The lane for us is can be very wishy-washy. Do you know what I mean? When it comes to this, do you guys have like rules that you live by, or when to refer, or, do you have like standards that you will keep, or do you, tell me about what you think staying in your lane or not staying in your lane means to you guys?
I think it's to do with my own understanding. Like there's so much information out there now where we can learn without this like prior study, right? Prerequisite study of EP.
Yeah.
But that still doesn't mean that I'm qualified to then rehab someone. That's not my scope.
Yep.
Right? My scope's to get someone stronger. But during working with someone, we are going to go through pain. And so if I can clearly link like some sort of pain related to something that I can clearly identify based off pattern recognition, which is like
Yep.
squat, bench, deadlift, center of mass related issues, if we can pull them back to alignment, then like that fixes things. Like,
Yep.
sweet, that's fine. But if it's something where you still I can't quite put my finger on it, and it's like there's a lot more intricacy to it, then it's worth sending someone off to get a referral, get assessed, and have a solution that isn't, you know, based off like adjusting technique, things like that, because that can help. But if it's still present, then there's not much else of a toolbox that us as coaches can dive into before it's like we're just digging at straws and we're not qualified to do. So that's where my head's at with that.
Yeah. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, I'm the same. It's like we've dealt with it. We're going to deal with people that are going through pain. We see movement every single day. We watch a ton of videos, right? And we can see what's going wrong and what's going right and how something could have occurred. But it's also, I usually give myself a week, and if I can't fix it, or not fix it, if I can't get the pain to come down, I'll refer out.
Yeah.
Because it becomes also extremely time consuming at the same time, because like I said, like communication becomes like frequently throughout the day. Then like I'll be like, I need you to tell me how you're feeling throughout the day. Like even just moving around. If you wake up, do you wake up and you're in more pain, but you're all right by the afternoon or something? So is it something that gradually gets better throughout the day as you keep moving?
Yeah.
So it's more like, I also leave it up to them. If they want to, if they're kind of aware enough and self-aware enough to be able to acknowledge how they're moving and what the pain is and how they're like what's flaring it up or what's making it worse, and be able to let me know what ROM they're going through, then I know that they somewhat have some idea of what's going on. Whereas we may have someone on the other end of the scale who just like is in the pain and they're just feeling the pain, and it's like they need to be referred out and speak to us pain specialists.
Yeah.
Because that person's obviously catastrophizing it quite hard, and they like what I say, they may not kind of, I guess, deal with as well as if they speak to someone who specializes in dealing with pain management and being able to get around it, who can work in conjunction with me.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
that's the different style as well. So, but if it's someone that, like I said, is good enough to be able to, I won't say good enough, is just aware enough to be able to understand the ROMs that they can push themselves through and then be able to communicate that so I can adjust programming things, then that's someone that I probably don't refer out unless I need to, because it doesn't get better.
Yep.
But then we have the other end where it's just everything is painful, and I can be like, can you try this, and what's the pain? And it's like they just report back every single time that it feels the same amount of pain, then I need to refer this person out.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Dave?
I think so, sort of similar to the boys. We've obviously been lifting for a while personally, so you obviously sort of go through your own niggles, and you can use that personal experience to try and help someone, as well as, you know, watching videos all the time. You get an idea of what might be going on. So similar to Steve, if I've been trying something and it hasn't been having the effect that I want, so pain isn't coming down, or things are just feeling, you know, generally not that great, I'll refer out. If it's in the middle of like a comp prep, I'll usually be pretty quick to refer out and just say like, yeah, maybe I could figure this out if you give me, you know, a week or a little bit more or whatever, and we can do some trial and error and see what works. But at that point in time, it's kind of like, I just want to get this fixed and on top of straight away, so we can continue to put load on the bar and get you as strong as possible for this meet that's coming up. So I think it's also sort of situation dependent if there's, you know, something happening or something coming up. And then probably lastly as well, if it's a recurring thing, so if this person keeps getting like a shoulder injury on bench or a shoulder issue, whatever, and we sort of, you know, get rid of it, we fix it, and then it just comes back, and then, you know, the stimulus we used to fix it in the first place doesn't work, and then we change and we change. There's kind of like this underlying cause that I might be missing. And at that point, it's like, okay, let's refer out and, you know, get someone to get on top of this so that we don't have to keep dealing with it every time it pops up.
Yeah, you just mentioned too that if it's reoccurring, I find that sometimes it's reoccurring in the same part of a block, or it's reoccurring at the same part of a prep. That can be a volume and intensity thing that needs to be looked at on our end as well.
Yeah, correct. Like a programming issue for sure.
Yeah. How do you guys how have you guys worked with improving your education when it comes to, knowing the big rocks of working with someone who might be in pain?
So I was looking, like most of my understanding around it is around, what's his name? I think it's Mosley and David Graham's pain science stuff.
Yep.
So that with chronic pain, and learning about all like the characteristics of it, like I said, like it's not an indication of damage, but it could be. People just feel it sometimes, like all that kind of stuff. I've
Yep.
gotten a lot from them, as well as like biopsychosocial model of pain, and it's to do with like the beliefs, attitudes, how everyone's different because of like the environment, things like that. But like I said, aside from that, I don't dive too deep into the pain science. As long as I have some understanding of what it is, and I can communicate it with like my people as well as like referring out,
Yep.
I think it gives me enough without needing to go into a rabbit hole.
Yeah. What about like general biomechanics? Have you done any courses, or do you think any courses are really valuable for young coaches to do?
I like looking at like Bill Hartman's model and everything that comes out of that.
Yeah.
Like, especially for powerlifting, where we know most of our lifts are like axially loaded. We tend to fall forward, and therefore like all those structures related to extension, so like back extensors, quad extensors, hips, knees, all that kind of stuff gets stressed out more than like flexion based stuff. And so therefore it's just a like general case, but like if all powerlifters present the same, then if we provide them with like a bit more flexion or something like that, it'll help a little bit. But
Yep.
it's just a generality, like Bill Hartman's model, everything that comes out of that. So like Zach Couples, Pat Davidson, who was a mentor under him,
Yeah.
Connor Harris, PRI. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Interesting. What about you, Dave?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head that I would, I guess, recommend from like a biomechanics perspective. I think that's generally something you get better at the more you get exposed to different kind of lifters.
Yeah.
Troubleshoot any sort of technique problems that come your way. Like that's probably the best thing that you can do, is just get exposed to like different bodies, different people, and sort of learn how these people move and how you have to adjust things or cue things to get the desired result. Yeah, I can't think of anything in particular that I would recommend course wise. That would be valuable.
Not even the exercise physiology degree.
Oh yeah, I mean that's been great. I was trying to think of like little like I was 16 weeks, you know. Yeah, look, if you want to do the 4-year degree, then go for it.
Hey,
But
there was 2 subjects that were pretty valuable. Functional anatomy was one of them, and anatomy was the second. Those 2 subjects were pretty damn valuable. So,
yeah, correct. I would agree with that. I thought you were talking about 16-week, 8-week courses that people could do. No, yeah, uni degree is solid. Uni degree is solid.
What you said then about people, and what both you guys have said is there's patterns that we move in, and there's things we need to try within reason. You know what I'm saying? So those things are big rocks. What about you, Steve? Anything that you've learned over the years or done that's helped you to know more?
Being injured, one thing.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't, like, as much as I can say like these injuries have delayed my my progress or something like that, I don't think they really have. Like that, if anything, they've just made me mentally stronger and more resilient.
Yeah.
But being injured is I'm not gonna say go out and get fucking injured, because like that's just, you don't do that. But it's taught me how to be able to deal with things really well, because I've almost had every injury you could think of. So I know just from movement wise what someone should be able to move through, just because I've been through that myself. Another thing too is like, if just moving yourself, right? If you're going to be a powerlifting coach, at least do a little bit of it so you know how something should feel.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't have to be the world's best fucking powerlifting coach, or you don't have to be phenomenally strong. I mean,
Yep.
not coach, I mean powerlifter. You don't have to be phenomenally strong. But
Yeah.
if you at least try to do the movement, you should know how it should feel, right? And
Yep.
then it makes it so much easier to explain to someone, you know, even if we nut it down to just the breathing, right? And bracing and how different it is throughout all three lifts. And what we're doing and where we breathe into and how we maintain that brace and how we, you know, get into a stacked position or something like that, how we do it. If you do it yourself, you can explain it so much better than reading it off an article of how someone else explains it, because you're going to have your own words and your own descriptions then to be able to explain it to someone. And then when they come back and say, I don't feel this, then you can be like, okay, this is another way that I thought about it, which might actually work for this way. Because there's so many different ways to explain something to someone, right? If you just copy one blueprint that you read off the internet, it's just not going to be feasible for every single person that you work with.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I remember myself, I went through this phase a couple of years ago when, you know, Sam started to get really strong. I was like, shit. I was like, I got to keep training myself so I can feel what it feels like to feel that way, because I'm losing touch with what it feels like. And I don't.
Yeah, 100%.
All you guys have competed, and you know, for me, it's just like making sure that I continue to be in the gym 3-4 times a week to feel what it feels like to lift weights, you know?
It's not just that. It's like you could probably notice or acknowledge, like, okay, Sam's falling this way in his squat. So you can put a barbell on your back. You can throw yourself the way that you see him fall, because you can watch it so well and you can acknowledge it from your point of view being his coach, especially in person.
Yep.
You can throw yourself into that position and then feel yourself correct it and then potentially be able to explain to him how.
Definitely, 100%. I just wanted to finish off you guys with each of you going through like a case study of an athlete that you've worked with pain over the years, and what that athlete went through and what you did with the measures that you worked with them to essentially build back their program to getting back into competing again. I'll start with you, Danny. I put you on the spot, man.
I mean, based off recent history, like I've had one person who's been experiencing like SI joint pain and SI and that whole area. And before we get into like, it's not the SI, it's like because there's so many structures around that, but like that general area has got like flared up, and it makes sense in the context of powerlifting because, like I said, so much extension is going on, and so that kind of structure can get flared up, and so couldn't squat, couldn't deadlift, pain when extending and creating the arch and bench as well, right? So for me, it was like, all right, step one, make sure that it doesn't get worse. So try and substitute those like SBD movements with something that they can do. So low bar became like belt squat, and that was perfect because you can still load a lot of weight on the belt squat and still get stimulus. So that was great. Bench became like hook lying to prevent like that extension in the pelvis. And then deadlifts, same thing with like belt squat. We were just belt squatting a lot, leg press, things like that. And then just monitoring that over time. So I think it's been about 2 or 3 weeks, and it started off very severe. It was like 8 out of 10, not doing activities specific to SBD, and it was still painful. It was just lingering. And then day by day, it was getting better. Still flaring up here and there, but trending over the course of the week, it's getting better. And now they're reporting feeling pain-free, which is good. And then on top of that as well, like trying to bring their center of mass back a bit more and using exercises that help. So like goblet squat, where we front load the squat, force them to not go through as much extension in the pelvis so they can just, you know, tuck it right under, essentially. Get a bit more flexion, and that can feed some of the bottom position where they were reporting like, when I get to the bottom of my low bar squat, it's really painful. So that gave them some ROM to train through. And aside from that, like it's been good. It's been good.
Good. I like to hear your take on it, because your take on that is probably a little bit different from some of the guys' takes around here. And I think that is a good thing, because I know that there's like powerlifting, there's 2 movements, like flexion and extension. You can use either one of those 2 to get your end result that you want. Does that make sense? So you either go the other way, swing back into flexion and then try and move back into extension again. Or you can go straight back into extension, feeding them into the painful area and then help improving those tissues over time.
Yeah, to add to that as well, like we didn't stop squatting or deadlifting. I told them like if you need to cut depth, and if you need to pull off blocks. So we didn't completely get rid of it either.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Dave?
I guess the most recent one that comes to mind is someone that had tricep pain when benching. So benching 4 times a week, and consistently the third day would show up with the most amount of pain. So he was in comp prep at the time, so we found that a closer grip made things feel a little bit better. So on that day where things felt particularly off, that was when we dialed RP right down and we ran the close grip day on that day, just as a way to sort of like, I guess, get through the session, because that day 3 was always just really, really painful. So we ran close grip, really low RP on that day. And then the day 1 was always the day that had the least amount of pain, because he had rested over the weekend and came into the Monday feeling pretty good. So we sort of front loaded most of our pressing and most of our bench volume on that day. And then it sort of slowly tapered off as we approached that third day, and just sort of, I guess, managed it through that sort of lens of like the days where it was decent and good, we pushed a little bit harder. And then on the days where it was bad, we sort of ran the variations, pulled RP, load managed, and reduced volume. So that's probably the most prolific one we've had there. And then in the meantime, in the background, it was finding exercises that helped and felt pretty good. So lots of sort of rowing seemed to be the thing that worked well for him. So we just increased rowing volume around sort of bench sessions, and then just found variations that helped from there.
Yep. That's good, Steve.
I've had a lot over the years, right?
Yeah.
So damn. Let me think. Even if I just think like right now, someone that's dealing with pain, if we think we've got a guy with the adductor strain that I was talking about earlier. So it's like at the moment we have a day where we've got to, get him forward, get the knees forward, get him away from, the way that he squats. And so one day we've got him, double heel, pushing everything away. And then we've got at the same time on his other day, I've got him tempo squatting, so we can still have this competition variation, but it's extremely low limited, right? So, but at the same time, like I have a process of how I'm going to work this over the next 6 to 8 weeks, because it's something that was quite severe. It's not something that I'm taking very lightly. So it's like, and he's pulling off blocks at the same time. But I give him a list of exercises, right? And I'm like, can you try all of these? Let me know what's the most tolerable, what you cannot tolerate, and what the pain level of each is. And then once they report back, it's then easier. Okay, now I can write this program to be able to put in what I think they need, what's tolerable, what's not tolerable, and over time, how I'm going to gradually progress this, right? So eventually what I'll do is, I'll have one set of those double heels will be off the floor.
Yep.
Right. And then over time, and then 2 weeks, we might have 2 sets. Okay. And then we might add like a top set. We might do it. And then those block deadlifts off block, right? We might do 1 set off the floor or off 1 lesser block, slowly bring it down so we can get them off the floor for 1 set. Yeah. And then we go the other way. And then we try and get a second set down. But it's a gradual process, right? It's not just like, okay, I'm not feeling any pain now. They're reporting pain free. That like, I don't really lean into that very much, just because someone starts to report that they feel pain free, because I know that from experience, the damage that was done probably hasn't built up enough tolerance yet to be able to perform a proper specific program yet. So we still need to gradually progress. As much as someone can get annoyed by that at the same time because they feel like they just want to push because it's been so long, we need to take our time through it.
Yep.
So it's like understanding that, writing up, I guess, like the skeleton of their program, and then how I'm going to progress and think about that in my head while I do it. So it's like, at this week, we'll do this, like we'll bring this down. And then the next week or 2 weeks after, I'll then go into that deadlift day and I'll bring that down. So that's progressing the fact that the squat's now off the floor 1 set, and the deadlift is off the floor 1 set.
Yep. Yep.
And it's just progressing that slowly over maybe 1 or 2 blocks, potentially even 3, and then eventually everything kind of gets back, and it's like, but slowly got back there the whole time.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Okay, I think that'll do us for today. I think I just want to finish off by saying, you know, it's important for young coaches to know when to stay in their lane. And we've given heaps of methods and topics on how we deal with it ourselves. But I think at the end of the day, we're not, you know, not allied health or anyone who, you know, not physiotherapists. So we need to make sure that, you know, if that athlete needs to work with someone, we're able to identify when that time is. So anyone listening, I don't take this as gospel with how to actually rehab all of your athletes. This is just
I think we all said we all refer out as well. So.
Yeah, this is just some information on how you could load manage or deal with load management strategies yourself. Okay, thanks heaps for your time, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.
You.